The check arrived at the table like a declaration of war. $8,000. I read the numbers 1, 2, 3 times, hoping that one of them would disappear by magic. But no, there they were, printed in black ink on white paper, as real as the silence that suddenly fell over the entire table. I was sitting at the head, hands in my lap, feeling the air in the restaurant turn heavier, denser, as if someone had slammed all the windows shut. Around me were 20 people, 20, and not a single one of them was mine. They all belonged to the family of Tiffany, my daughter-in-law. Everyone had eaten, drunk, laughed, ordered extra sides, desserts, bottles of wine that I did not even know existed. And now they were all quiet, looking at me. I felt their eyes like needles pricking my skin. I looked at my son, Lucas, searching his face for some sign that he was going to handle this, that he was going to speak up, that he was going to say something. But Lucas did not look at me. He had his eyes fixed on his phone, as if none of this were happening. I squeezed my fingers against the fabric of my skirt, trying to keep calm. My heart was beating so loud I thought everyone could hear it. I wanted to say something, but I did not know what. I wanted to stand up, but my legs would not respond. And then Lucas looked up. He looked me straight in the eyes, unblinking, without any expression on his face. And he said, with a voice so cold it did not seem like his, "Mom, you get this. We will be waiting in the car." Just like that, without hesitating, without shame, as if he were asking me to pick up a loaf of bread. I felt something break inside me, something that had been holding me up for years, for my whole life. Tiffany was already standing, adjusting her purse on her shoulder, smiling barely, with that smile I had learned to hate in silence. The others began to get up too, one by one, saying goodbye to each other, laughing as if nothing had happened, as if I were not there, as if I were invisible, as if I were just a wallet with legs. I remained seated, with the check in front of me, feeling the world move in slow motion. Lucas was already walking toward the exit, without looking back. Tiffany followed him, talking to her mother, her brothers, her aunts. Nobody said thank you to me. Nobody asked me if I was okay. Nobody asked me if I could pay for that. Because to them, I could. To them, I was Eleanor Vance, the woman who always said yes, the woman who always found a way, the woman who never complained. But in that moment, sitting alone at that enormous table, surrounded by empty plates and dirty wine glasses, I knew something. I knew that this had not started today. This came from much earlier. This had been growing in silence, like a poisonous weed that I had watered without realizing it. And now it was in front of me, enormous, inevitable, asking me to pay for it. I took my purse with trembling hands. I opened it slowly, feeling all the waiters watching me from afar, waiting. The restaurant manager was already approaching, with that face of fake concern that people have when they know someone is not going to be able to pay. I took out my wallet, opened it, and saw my cards, my bills, everything I had saved for months, for years, everything I had gathered with so much effort. And then I thought about something. I thought about how many times I had done this before, how many times I had paid without anyone asking me, how many times I had given without anyone thanking me, how many times I had stayed silent so as not to cause problems. And I asked myself, until when? Until when was I going to keep doing this? Until when was I going to let them treat me as if I did not matter? I closed the wallet. I closed the purse. I got up from the chair, feeling my legs shaking but holding me up. The manager looked at me with surprise. I looked at him, and then I looked toward the door, where my son had already disappeared. And then I walked. I walked toward the exit, with my head held high, with my heart shattered, but with something new inside me. Something I had not felt in a long time. Something that looked like dignity. Behind me, I heard the manager calling me. I heard voices rising. I heard hurried footsteps, but I did not stop. I kept walking, because in that moment I knew that if I stopped, if I went back, if I paid that bill, I was going to die in there. Not physically, but in all the ways that matter. I was going to die as a woman, as a mother, as a human being. And I was not willing to die like that. Not yet. Not for them. It had all started 3 days earlier, on a Tuesday afternoon, when the phone rang while I was watering the plants on the balcony. It was Lucas. I felt that little spark of joy I always felt when I saw his name on the screen. That foolish mother's hope thinking her son is calling because he misses her, because he wants to know how she is, because he cares. I answered quickly, wiping my hands on my apron. "Hello, son," I said, trying not to sound too anxious, too needy. He responded with a casual tone, almost disinterested. "Hey, Mom. Calling real quick. Tiffany and I want to invite you to dinner this Friday. Nothing formal, just something chill with the family." I felt my heart fill with hope. I had not seen them in weeks. It had been weeks since I waited for some sign that I still existed for them, that I still mattered. "Of course, son, of course," I responded immediately, without thinking. "What time? Where? Do you need me to bring anything?" Lucas paused, as if he were doing something else while talking to me. "No, Mom, don't bring anything. Just come. I'll text you the address later. It's a new restaurant Tiffany likes." I nodded, even though he could not see me. "Perfect, son. I will be there." "Thanks for inviting me." There was another awkward silence. And then he said, "Okay, Mom, gotta run. See you Friday." And he hung up before I could say anything else. I stood there, with the phone in my hand, feeling that strange mix of happiness and emptiness I had learned to carry in recent months. Happiness because my son had called me, because he had invited me, because I was going to see him. Emptiness because the call had been so short, so cold, so mechanical. But I told myself it did not matter, that the important thing was that he had thought of me, that he still wanted me in his life. I went back to my plants, but I could no longer concentrate. My mind was thinking about what to wear, if I should bring a gift for Tiffany, even though Lucas had said no, if I should offer to pay the tip or wait for them to handle it. I knew Lucas was not going through a good financial moment. He never told me directly, but I noticed. I noticed how he avoided talking about his job, how Tiffany always mentioned things they needed, things they wanted to buy but could not. I had helped several times. I had given them money for rent when they were behind. I had bought things for their house. I had paid for car repairs. They never asked me directly, but they always dropped comments. They always made me feel that if I did not help, they were going to suffer. And I could not stand the idea of my son suffering. So I helped. I always helped. That night I did not sleep well. I tossed and turned in bed, thinking about the dinner, imagining how it would be. I imagined myself laughing with Lucas, chatting with Tiffany, feeling that I was still part of something, that I still had a family. Because that was my reality now. I lived alone in this small apartment since my husband had died 5 years ago. Lucas was all I had left. He was my only family, my only connection to the world. My friends told me I needed to get a life, that I needed to go out more, meet people, do things for me. But I did not know how. I had spent my whole life being a wife, being a mother, being the person who took care of others. I did not know who Eleanor Vance was without that. I did not know what to do with myself when there was no one who needed me. The days passed slowly, as if time knew something important was going to happen. On Wednesday, I went to the bank to take out money, just in case. I withdrew $500 in cash and put them in my wallet, in the secret compartment where I always kept the important stuff. On Thursday, I went to the salon and got my hair done. I wanted to look good. I wanted Lucas to feel proud of me. I wanted Tiffany to have nothing bad to say, because Tiffany always found something. There was always a comment about my clothes, about my hair, about how I spoke or how I acted. It was never anything direct. It was always disguised as concern, as advice, as help. But I felt it. I felt how she looked at me, how she measured me, how she judged me. And I, like a fool, always tried to please her, always tried to be better, to be enough for her. Friday arrived. I woke up early, nerves on edge. I showered, put on my best dress, the one I had bought 2 years ago for a wedding and almost never used because I never had anywhere to go. I applied makeup carefully, put on perfume, put on the earrings my husband had given me on our last anniversary. I looked in the mirror and saw a 67-year-old woman trying to look important, trying to look loved. I saw a woman who was hungry for affection, for attention, for someone to tell her she still mattered. And it made me sad. It made me sad to see myself like that, so needy, so lonely. But I forced myself to smile. I forced myself to think positively. Today was going to be a good day. Today I was going to be with my son. That was the only thing that mattered. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes before the agreed time. I did not want to be late. I did not want Lucas to get annoyed. The place was elegant, much more elegant than I expected. There were white tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters with impeccable uniforms. I felt out of place immediately, but I took a deep breath and went in. I gave my name to the hostess, and she led me toward a large table at the back of the room. An enormous table, and that was when I saw it. That was when my stomach tightened and I knew something was wrong. Because that table was not for 3 people. That table was for 20. Lucas was standing next to the table, talking to someone on the phone. When he saw me arrive, he cut the call quickly and greeted me with a peck on the cheek. His greeting was cold, automatic, like someone fulfilling an obligation. "Hey, Mom." "You're early," he said, and I did not know if that was good or bad. "I wanted to make sure I wasn't late, son," I replied, trying to sound cheerful, although inside I already felt a knot in my stomach. I looked at the giant table and then I looked at him. "Is it going to be just us 3? I asked, signaling with my gaze the 20 empty seats. Lucas avoided my eyes. Yeah, well, Tiffany invited some family members. You know how she is. She likes the family to be united." I nodded, although inside something told me this was not right, that something in all this did not make sense. "Some family members," I repeated, trying to maintain calm. "How many are coming?" Lucas shrugged, as if it were not important. "I don't know, Mom. 10, 15. Not many. It's just a chill dinner, don't worry." But I was already worried, because this was not what he had told me. He had told me it would be something intimate, something family style, just us 3. And now, it turned out there were going to be 15 people I did not know. People from Tiffany's family, people who did not even know who I was. I felt deceived, but I said nothing. I did not want to ruin the night. I did not want Lucas to think I was bitter, a difficult old woman who could not adapt to anything. So I smiled and said, "Okay, son, no problem." Tiffany arrived 10 minutes later, accompanied by her mother, 2 sisters, and 3 cousins. They all entered laughing, talking loudly, occupying the space as if the entire restaurant were theirs. Tiffany greeted me with a kiss in the air, without touching me, and said, "Hi, Eleanor. So good you could come." Could come. As if I had to make an enormous effort to be there, as if I were doing them a favor. I swallowed hard and replied, "Thanks for inviting me, Tiffany." She was no longer looking at me. She was already introducing me to her family, as if I were one more piece of furniture. "This is Eleanor, Lucas's mom," she was saying, and everyone nodded with fake courtesy, with those smiles that do not reach the eyes. Nobody asked me questions. Nobody showed interest. They just said hello and continued with their conversations. I sat at a corner of the table, as far as possible from the center. Lucas sat at the other end, next to Tiffany, surrounded by her whole family. I stayed there, alone, without anyone talking to me, watching as everyone laughed, toasted, ordered drinks. The waiter passed several times, offering wines, cocktails, appetizers. I ordered only a glass of water. I did not want to spend. I did not want to draw attention. But everyone else ordered without limit. I saw Tiffany's mother order a bottle of wine that cost $200. I saw the cousins ordering appetizers, special dishes, things from the menu that did not even have a visible price. And every time someone ordered something, I felt my stomach tighten a little more, because I knew how these things worked. I knew that when the check came, someone was going to have to pay it, and I was afraid of being that someone. I tried to talk to Lucas from my seat. I called him a couple of times, but he did not hear me, or pretended not to hear me. He was too busy laughing with Tiffany's brothers, too busy pouring wine, too busy being the perfect son-in-law. I felt invisible. I felt that I did not matter there, that I was just an ornament, one more number at the table. And then the food arrived. Enormous plates, steaks, seafood, sides, sauces. Everything looked beautiful. Everything smelled delicious, but I could barely eat. I had a knot in my throat that did not let me swallow. Around me, everyone ate and laughed, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. As if spending hundreds of dollars in a single night were something everyday, something unimportant. At one moment, Tiffany's sister, a woman of about 40 who did not stop talking, looked at me from the other side of the table and said, "Eleanor, you must be proud of Lucas. Tiffany tells us he is a very attentive son, very generous." I did not know what to answer. Generous? Lucas? My son who had not visited me in months unless it was to ask for something, who called me only when he needed money, who had invited me to this dinner without even warning me it was going to be a massive event. But I smiled and said, "Yes, I am very proud of him." Because that was what was supposed to be said. That was what a good mother said, even though inside she felt something was deeply wrong. Then Tiffany's mother, a lady of about 60 with expensive jewelry and an air of superiority, leaned toward me and asked, "Eleanor, do you still work or are you already retired?" The question sounded innocent, but I felt the poison behind it. "I am retired," I replied calmly. "I worked 30 years as a secretary in an accounting firm." She nodded, but her expression did not change. "Oh, that's nice. Surely you have a good pension then." I felt my face getting hot. "It is modest, but it is enough for me to live," I said, trying to sound dignified. She smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "That's good, because raising children isn't easy, and now that they are grown, at least one can enjoy a little of what one saved, right?" I nodded, but inside something broke. Because I knew exactly what she was doing. She was measuring me. She was calculating how much money I had, how much she could get out of me. Tiffany joined the conversation. "Yes, Eleanor is very hardworking. Lucas always tells us how she raised him alone after his dad died." I looked at my son, hoping he would say something, that he would defend me, that he would set boundaries, but Lucas only nodded and kept eating. Tiffany continued. "Actually, she recently helped us with the rent. It is lucky to have such an understanding mother-in-law." I felt all the gazes of the table landing on me. I felt how they weighed me, how they judged me, how they labeled me. Eleanor, the mother-in-law with money. Eleanor, the payer. Eleanor, the piggy bank. I wanted to scream. I wanted to get up and run out, but I didn't. I stayed there, quiet, smiling, pretending everything was fine. Tiffany's brother, a young man of about 30, ordered another bottle of wine. Then he ordered desserts for the whole table. Then he ordered coffee, liqueurs, digestives. And every time he ordered something, he looked toward where I was, as if he were waiting for my reaction, as if he were testing me. I kept my gaze low, hands on my lap, heart beating so hard I felt it was going to burst. And then, in the middle of all that chaos, Lucas got up and went to the restroom. Tiffany followed him a few minutes later. I was left alone at the table with all those strange people, feeling the time become eternal, like every second was torture. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody included me. I was just the one who was there, occupying space, waiting for something to happen. When Lucas and Tiffany returned, he had a weird expression on his face. He wouldn't look me in the eye. Tiffany, on the other hand, was smiling. A triumphant, victorious smile. And I knew, in that moment, that something bad was about to happen. Something much worse than everything that had already happened that night. Because I knew that look. I had seen that look before. It was the look of someone who has already made a decision, someone who has already planned everything, someone who is just waiting for the perfect moment to execute their plan. And I was the target. When everyone finished eating, when there was nothing left on the plates, when the glasses were empty and the desserts consumed, the atmosphere changed. There was a strange silence, as if everyone were waiting for something. I looked around trying to understand what was happening, but nobody returned my gaze. Everyone avoided my eyes. Everyone seemed to be concentrated on their phones, on their private conversations, on anything but me, anything but the reality of what was coming. The waiter approached the table with a black folder in his hand. The check. My heart began to beat faster. I looked toward Lucas, hoping he would do something, that he would ask for the check, that he would take control of the situation. But Lucas remained on his phone, typing messages, completely ignoring what was happening. The waiter left the folder in the center of the table and withdrew discreetly. Nobody touched it. Nobody opened it. Everyone simply stayed there, like statues, waiting. Tiffany's mother was the first to speak. "What a wonderful dinner," she said with a wide smile. "It's been a long time since we ate so well as a family." The others nodded, murmuring words of agreement. "Yeah, it was incredible," said one of the cousins. "We should do this more often," added one of the sisters. I listened to all this feeling my stomach twisting, because nobody was mentioning the check. Nobody was offering to pay. Nobody was even acknowledging there was a debt pending on the table, and I knew why. I knew exactly why. Tiffany got up from her chair and walked toward the restroom, taking two of her sisters with her. They passed by me without saying a word, without even looking at me. I stayed there, feeling the weight of the situation falling on my shoulders. Lucas finally put away his phone and looked at me. But it was not the look of a worried son. It was not the look of someone trying to solve a problem. It was a cold, calculating, distant look. A look I did not recognize. A look that scared me. "Mom," he said in a low voice, barely audible among the noise of the restaurant. I leaned forward to hear him better. "Yes, son," I replied with a trembling voice, feeling that something terrible was about to happen. He did not answer immediately. He stayed looking at me, as if he were evaluating something, as if he were deciding what to say or how to say it. And then he said it. He said it with a naturalness that froze my blood. "The bill is $8,000. I felt the world stop. $8,000. 8,000. I repeated the number in my mind several times, trying to process it, trying to understand how it was possible for a dinner to cost so much. $8,000, I repeated aloud, almost breathless. Lucas nodded, showing no emotion. "Yeah, it's an expensive restaurant, but it was worth it, don't you think?" Everyone enjoyed it a lot. I could not believe what I was hearing. I could not believe my son was talking about this as if it were something normal, as if $8,000 were pocket change. "Lucas, I don't have $8,000, I said, feeling my voice breaking. "I didn't know this was going to cost so much. You told me it was a simple dinner, something quiet with family." He shrugged, as if my distress meant nothing to him. "Well, Mom, things changed. Tiffany wanted to invite her family, and you know how these things are. You can't control what others order." I looked at him in disbelief. Can't control? He was the one who had organized this. He was the one who had invited me. He was the one who had never warned me this was going to be a massive event, an expensive celebration, a financial trap. "Son, I cannot pay that," I repeated, feeling the tears beginning to form in my eyes. "It is too much money. It is more than I get in 3 months." Lucas sighed, as if I were being difficult, as if I were exaggerating. "Mom, don't be dramatic. You have savings. You have your retirement fund. I know you can do it." I felt something inside me break. My savings. My retirement fund. He knew everything about my financial situation because I had told him. Because I trusted him. Because I thought he looked after me, that he protected me, that he would never use that information against me. But I was wrong. I was completely wrong. "Lucas, those savings are for emergencies," I said, trying to maintain calm, trying to make him see reason. "They are for when I get sick, for when I need something important. They are not to pay for a dinner that I didn't even know was going to cost so much." He leaned toward me, lowering his voice even more, speaking with a tone that sounded almost threatening. "Mom, listen to me closely. All these people are important to Tiffany. They are important to me. We can't look bad here. We can't look like broke losers who can't pay a bill. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" I looked at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. My son was telling me that his image, his reputation in front of his wife's family, was more important than my well-being, than my financial stability, than my dignity. "Son, please," I whispered, feeling the tears finally beginning to roll down my cheeks. "Don't do this to me. Don't put me in this situation." But Lucas was no longer listening to me. He was no longer looking at me. Tiffany had returned from the restroom with her sisters, all laughing, all oblivious to what was happening. Or maybe not so oblivious. Maybe they knew exactly what was happening. Maybe all of this had been planned from the beginning. Tiffany approached Lucas and whispered something in his ear. He nodded and then got up from the table. I looked at him desperately, hoping he was going to solve this, that he was going to talk to the manager, that he was going to look for a solution. But no. He walked toward the exit of the restaurant, and Tiffany followed him. And one by one, all the members of her family began to get up too. I stayed frozen in my chair, watching everyone leave, seeing how they left me alone with the check in the center of the table. Tiffany's mother passed by me and gave me a little pat on the shoulder. "Thanks for dinner, Eleanor." Everything was delicious, and she kept walking as if nothing, as if she had just thanked me for something I had offered voluntarily, something I had wanted to do. But I had not wanted to do any of this. I had only wanted to see my son. I had only wanted to feel that I still had a family. And now I was here, alone, abandoned, with a debt of $8,000 in front of me and not knowing what to do. The cousins, the sisters, the aunts, everyone passed by me saying goodbye with fake smiles, with empty thank yous, with looks that said, "Poor old lady, what a pity." But no one offered to help. No one asked if I was okay. No one questioned why I had to pay for all of them. Because to them I was just that, the mother-in-law with money, the old lady who paid, the fool who always said yes. And I had let them see me like that. I had allowed them to treat me like that. For months, for years, I had accepted this without saying anything, without setting boundaries, without defending myself. And now I was paying the price. Lucas appeared at the entrance of the restaurant. He looked at me from afar with that same cold expression and made a gesture with his hand. A gesture that said, "Hurry up, we are waiting." And then he said it. He said it loudly, loud enough for everyone in the restaurant to hear him. "Mom, you pay there, we will be waiting in the car." And he left. He turned around and left, leaving me there, exposed, humiliated, destroyed. I stayed seated, hands trembling, heart broken into 1,000 pieces, feeling all the gazes of the restaurant stabbing into me. The waiter approached cautiously, with the folder in hand, waiting. And I knew the moment had arrived. The moment where I had to decide who I was. The moment where I had to choose between continuing to be the Eleanor everyone knew or becoming someone completely different. The waiter stood next to me, holding the black folder with the check as if it were a death sentence. I could feel his discomfort. I could feel how he was also waiting, evaluating, wondering if I was going to be able to pay or if there was going to be a problem. I extended my hand toward the folder with trembling fingers and opened it. There it was. $8,122.50. I read every line. 3 bottles of wine at $200 each. 2 bottles of champagne at $350. Lobsters, imported steaks, special dishes I had not even seen pass by my side of the table. Gourmet desserts, specialty coffee, premium liqueurs. Everything was there, detailed. Every cent spent by people who did not even know me, who had not even spoken a word to me beyond a polite and fake greeting. I closed the folder and held it against my chest. My mind was racing at 1,000 miles per hour. I had $500 in cash in my purse. I had a credit card with a limit of $3,000 that I kept only for emergencies. I had a debit card connected to my savings account, where the last $6,000 I had left in the world were. $6,000 that I had gathered over years, working overtime, saving every cent, depriving myself of things, of trips, of treats, of everything, just to have something that gave me security, something that protected me in case something bad happened. And now my son was asking me to spend all that, to empty my account, to leave myself with nothing, just to save his image in front of people who did not matter to me. The waiter cleared his throat softly. "Ma'am, do you need a moment?" he asked with a kind voice, but I could hear the pressure behind his words. I looked up at him and nodded. "Yes, please, just a moment." He stepped away, but not too far. He stayed close, watching, waiting. I looked toward the exit of the restaurant. I could see the glass doors, the dark street on the other side, the lights of cars passing. I knew Lucas was outside, sitting in his car, waiting for me to do what I always did, waiting for me to pay, waiting for me to swallow my pride, my pain, my humiliation, and to act like the good mother I had always been, the mother who never said no, the mother who always sacrificed herself. I took my phone out of my purse with trembling hands. I dialed Lucas's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. He did not answer. I dialed again. Nothing. I sent a text message. "Son, please, come back. I need to talk to you. This is too much." I waited, looking at the screen, begging for the 3 dots indicating he was typing to appear. but they did not appear. Nothing. He was ignoring me. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew I was desperate, that I was suffering, and he did not care. Or maybe he did care, but he cared more about his pride, more about his image, more about what Tiffany and her family thought of him. I looked at the check again. $8,000. For one dinner. For 2 hours of food and drink with people who did not know me, who did not appreciate me, who probably would not even remember my name tomorrow. I thought about all the times I had helped Lucas. I thought about the $2,000 I gave him when he fell behind on rent. I thought about the $1,500 I loaned him to fix the car. I thought about the expensive birthday gifts for Tiffany, the appliances I bought them when they moved, the times I paid for their groceries without them asking, just because I wanted to help, just because I wanted to be a good mother-in-law, someone useful, someone who deserved to be in their lives. I thought about my husband, about how he had told me before dying that I should take care of myself, that I should think about myself, that I owed nothing to anyone but myself. He had left me a little money, not much, but something, and I had spent it all on Lucas. All of it, because I thought that was love, because I thought a good mother sacrificed herself until the end, until she was left with nothing. But now, sitting there in that elegant and cold restaurant, surrounded by empty plates and dirty wine glasses, I wondered if my husband hadn't been right. I wondered if all this time I hadn't been making an enormous mistake, a mistake that was now charging me the invoice. The restaurant manager approached the table. He was a man of about 50, with a dark suit and serious expression. "Ma'am, excuse the interruption. I just wanted to confirm if you are going to proceed with the payment." His tone was professional but firm. I knew what that meant. It meant that if I didn't pay, they were going to take measures. Measures I didn't even want to imagine. "Yes, I am going to pay," I said, although my voice sounded like another person's, like someone who was very far away. The manager nodded. "Perfect. Will it be cash or card?" I opened my purse and looked inside. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold anything. I took out my wallet. I took out the $500 in cash. I put them on the table. Then I took out my credit card. I held it between my fingers, looking at it as if it were something alien, something that didn't belong to me. If I used that card, I was going to be in debt. I was going to have to pay interest. I was going to have to live with that debt for months, maybe years. And then I took out my debit card, the card connected to my savings, to everything I had left. If I used that card, I was going to be left with less than $2,000 in the bank. $2,000 to live the rest of my days. $2,000 for medicine, for food, for emergencies, for everything. I looked toward the exit again. Outside, in the dark, was my son, my only son. The boy I had raised alone after his father died. The boy for whom I had worked double shifts for years so he could study, so he could have a better life than mine. The boy who was now doing this to me. And I felt something I had never felt toward him before. I felt rage. Pure, hot, burning rage. Rage because he had lied to me. Rage because he had used me. Rage because he knew exactly what he was doing and had done it anyway. Rage because he had turned me into this, into a broken woman, humiliated, abandoned in a restaurant with a bill she couldn't pay. The manager was still there, waiting. The waiters were watching from afar. Some people at other tables had noticed what was happening and were whispering among themselves. I could feel their gazes, their judgments, their opinions forming about me. Poor old lady. What a shame. Surely the family abandoned her with the check. What ungrateful children. But nobody approached. Nobody offered help. Nobody did anything but look and judge. Because that is what people do. They look, they judge, but they do not act. Not when it means getting involved, not when it means risking something of their own. I put the 2 cards on the table next to the cash. "I am going to pay with this," I said, pointing at everything. My voice sounded hollow, lifeless. The manager took the cards and the cash. "I will process it. One moment, please." He walked away and I was left there, alone again, feeling my entire life crumbling before my eyes. I thought about my mother, who had died when I was young. I thought about what she would have told me if she were here. She probably would have told me that family is the most important thing, that one always forgives, that children are children and you have to endure anything for them. But my mother had never gone through this. My mother had never been humiliated like this by her own son. I thought about the women my age I knew. Some lived with their children, happy, cared for, loved. Others lived alone but had good relationships with their families, saw each other often, shared, supported each other. And then there was me. Me, who had given everything and now had nothing. Me, who had sacrificed everything and was now being sacrificed. Me, who had believed that a mother's love was unconditional and now discovered that a son's love was not. The manager returned with a receipt. The payment was processed, he said, handing me the papers. It is $8,122 with 50 cents. $500 in cash, $3,000 on the credit card, and $4,622 with 50 on the debit card. I took the receipt and looked at it. There it was, the proof of my humiliation, the proof that I had paid for my own degradation. I put the paper in my purse and got up from the chair. My legs barely held me. The manager looked at me with something that looked like pity. "Have a good night, ma'am." I nodded without saying anything and walked toward the exit. Every step was heavy, painful, as if I were walking toward my own execution. I pushed the glass doors and went out to the street. The cold night air hit my face. I searched with my gaze for Lucas's car. I saw it parked halfway down the block, with the lights on, waiting for me. And something inside me broke completely. I walked toward Lucas's car, feeling like every step weighed more than the last. My legs were shaking, not from cold, but from contained rage, from accumulated pain, from years of silence that were now screaming inside me. I could see his silhouette in the driver's seat, Tiffany's in the passenger seat, both looking forward, as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't left me alone inside paying a bill that equaled half a year of my income. I reached the car and tapped on the window. Lucas rolled down the window just a few inches, enough for me to hear him. "Did you pay already, Mom?" he asked, without even looking me in the eyes. His voice sounded impatient, annoyed, as if I had taken too long, as if I had ruined his night with my slowness. "Yes, Lucas. I paid," I responded. My voice came out firmer than I expected, more controlled. He nodded and started to roll up the window again, but I put my hand on the glass, stopping him. "Wait. I need to talk to you." Lucas sighed with frustration. "Mom, it's late. We're tired. We'll talk tomorrow." I felt something inside me break definitively, something that had been holding on with pins for years, something that had been resisting every humiliation, every lack of respect, every moment of being treated as if I didn't matter. And now that something had broken, and there was no way to repair it. "No, Lucas, we are going to talk now," I said, and this time my voice sounded different. It sounded hard. It sounded like the voice of someone who has nothing left to lose. He looked at me finally, with that expression of annoyance I had seen so many times in recent months. "What is it now, Mom? Are you going to make a drama about dinner? I already told you I'll pay you back later." I laughed. It was a bitter laugh, without joy, without humor. "You're going to pay me back? With what money, Lucas? With the money you asked to borrow 3 months ago and never returned? With the money I gave you for rent and never saw back either? With what money exactly are you going to pay me $8,000? Tiffany turned in her seat and looked at me with disdain. "Eleanor, don't be dramatic. It was just a dinner. Besides, you have your Social Security, you have your savings. It's not like you're going to starve." Those words were like a punch in the stomach. Not like you're going to starve, as if that were enough. As if I should be grateful just to survive, to have the minimum, while they spent my money on luxuries they didn't even need. "Tiffany, that is not your decision," I said, looking directly at her. "That is not your money, and you have no right to tell me what I spend it on or don't spend it on." She raised her eyebrows, surprised that I answered her, surprised that I wasn't simply bowing my head and accepting everything as I always did. "Wow, seems like someone is cranky. Lucas, your mom is upset because she helped her family. How sad." No, she said it with sarcasm, with mockery, laughing while she said it. Lucas said nothing in my defense. He didn't ask Tiffany to shut up. He didn't defend me like a son should defend his mother. He just stayed there, silent, letting his wife insult me, humiliate me, treat me as if I were trash. And that was worse than anything she could say, because it proved to me that my son had chosen. He had chosen his side, and that side was not mine. You know what, Lucas? I said, taking a step back from the car. You are right. I am upset. But not because I helped my family. I am upset because I realized something. I realized that you are no longer my family. Not in the way that matters. My family wouldn't have lied to me about this dinner. My family wouldn't have left me alone in that restaurant. My family wouldn't have treated me like a wallet with legs. Lucas finally showed some emotion. Anger. Don't be ridiculous, Mom. What are you talking about? Of course I'm your family. I'm your son. I shook my head. No, Lucas. A mother is someone you respect, someone you care for, someone you value. But I am none of that to you. I am just someone convenient, someone you can take what you need from when you need it, and I allowed that. I allowed you to treat me like that because I was afraid of losing you, afraid of being left alone, afraid to admit that my son had become someone I don't recognize. My voice broke at the end, but I didn't cry. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Tiffany let out a cruel laugh. Oh, please. This is pathetic. Lucas, let's go. Your mom is being dramatic as always. But I hadn't finished. $8,000. Lucas. $8,000 that I didn't have, that I shouldn't spend, that I didn't want to spend. But I spent them. I spent them because you asked me to. Because you told me it was important. Because I still had that stupid hope that maybe, just maybe, if I did this, you would go back to being the son I knew. But I was wrong. That son no longer exists. And maybe he never existed. Lucas hit the steering wheel with frustration. That's enough, Mom. You always do the same thing. Always with your guilt. Always with your drama. I told you I'm going to pay you back. No, I said firmly. You are not going to pay me back. Because I am no longer going to accept anything from you. I am not going to accept your money. I am not going to accept your empty promises. And I definitely am not going to accept you treating me like this ever again. I took another step backward, moving away from the car. Lucas opened the door and got out, walking toward me with fast steps. What is that supposed to mean? Are you threatening me? I looked him in the eyes. Those eyes that were once my babies, my little boys, my son who hugged me and told me I was the best mom in the world. But those eyes were no longer there. There was only coldness, manipulation, selfishness. I am not threatening you, Lucas. I am telling you the truth. It's over. I am no longer going to be your backup plan. I am no longer going to be your financial solution. I am no longer going to be the person you call only when you need something. Tiffany got out of the car too, crossing her arms with arrogance. Wow, how brave you got all of a sudden, Eleanor. And what are you going to do? Are you going to cut contact with your only son? Please. We know you're not going to do it. You always come back. You always forgive. Because you are alone and you need us more than we need you. Her words were like poison, but I didn't back down. Because deep down, she was right about one thing. I had been alone. I had been needing them, but that was about to change. You're right, Tiffany. I have been alone. But I prefer to be alone with dignity than accompanied being humiliated. I turned around and started walking down the street, moving away from them, moving away from the car, moving away from everything. Mom, don't be stupid. How are you going to get home? Shouted Lucas behind me. I didn't stop. I took out my phone and called a cab. In 5 minutes, it was there. I got in without looking back, without turning to see if Lucas was following me, without caring anymore about what they thought or said. The driver asked for the address, and I gave it to him with a calm voice. While the cab drove away, I looked one last time out the rear window. Lucas and Tiffany were still standing there, watching the cab leave, and I knew something had changed forever, something that would never be the same again. I arrived at my apartment past midnight. The cab dropped me at the entrance, and I climbed the stairs slowly, feeling every step as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. I opened the door and entered the darkness. I didn't turn on the lights immediately. I stood there on the threshold, with my purse hanging from my shoulder, with the receipt for $8,000 at the bottom of the wallet. The house was silent. A heavy, crushing silence that reminded me I was alone, that I had always been alone, that the company I believed I had with Lucas was just an illusion, a mirage I had invented so as not to face the reality of my life. I walked to the sofa and let myself fall onto it. I didn't cry. I had no tears left. I only felt an enormous void in my chest, as if someone had ripped something vital out of me and left me hollow. I thought about all the money I had just spent. $8,000. I calculated mentally how much I had left. $1,300 in my savings account, $500 in cash I had stored at home for emergencies, and a debt of $3,000 on my credit card that I was going to have to pay with interest I couldn't afford. In total, less than $2,000 to live. My Social Security check was $900 a month. My rent was $600. I had $300 left for food, medicine, utilities, transport, everything. $300 to survive a whole month. I got up from the sofa and went to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator and saw how little was inside. Milk, eggs, some vegetables, a piece of cheese. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling the weight of everything crushing me. How had I reached this? How had I allowed my life to become this? I had worked for 30 years. I had been a responsible, thrifty, careful woman. I had planned my retirement. I had saved money. I had been prudent. And now, all that had vanished. All because of my son. All for trying to maintain a relationship that only existed in my imagination. I went back to the living room and sat in front of the small table where I had my phone. I picked it up and saw I had 3 missed calls from Lucas. And several messages. The first said, "Mom, don't be like that. You know I love you." The second, "Tiffany says you exaggerated. But it's okay. She'll get over it." The third, "We'll talk tomorrow when you're calmer." I read the messages without feeling anything. No anger, no sadness, nothing. Just a deep void. Because I realized something. Lucas wasn't sorry. Lucas wasn't worried about me. Lucas was only annoyed because I had reacted, because I had broken the pattern, because I hadn't done what he expected. He saw nothing wrong with what he had done. For him, it was normal. It was acceptable. It was what a mother should do for her son. Pay, shut up, obey, and keep paying. I blocked his number. It was an impulse, something I did without thinking much. But the moment I did it, I felt something strange. It wasn't relief exactly, but it wasn't pain either. It was as if I had closed a door that had been open for too long, letting in drafts of cold air that made me sick. Now that door was closed, and I was inside, alone, but at least protected. I put the phone aside and stared at the wall. I thought about my husband, about what he would have told me. He probably would have told me I did the right thing, that nobody deserved to be treated like that, not even by a son. But he would also have asked me what I was going to do now, because now I was truly alone. I no longer had the illusion of having a family. I had no one. I got up and went to my bedroom. I changed my clothes, took off the elegant dress I had worn with so much excitement hours before, thinking I was going to spend a nice night with my son. Now that dress disgusted me. I threw it in a corner of the room and put on my old, comfortable pajamas. I got into bed, but I couldn't sleep. I lay there, looking at the ceiling, thinking about everything. About the years I had spent raising Lucas alone. About the nights I had worked late to be able to pay for his college. About the times I had deprived myself of food so he could have food in his lunchbox. About everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed, everything I had given. And I asked myself if it had been worth it. I asked myself if all that sacrifice had served for anything, or if it had only created a selfish son who saw me as a resource and not as a person. The night was eternal. When the sun finally rose, I was still awake. I got up and made myself a coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and took out the dinner receipt. I spread it out in front of me and looked at it carefully, as if looking at it I could better understand what had happened. $8,122.50 for a single night, for 2 hours of humiliation, for the final proof that I didn't matter to my son. I took the receipt and tore it into small pieces, then I threw them in the trash, not because I wanted to forget, but because I didn't want to keep seeing that evidence of my own stupidity, of my own weakness, of everything I had allowed. 2 days passed. 2 days in which I didn't leave my house, didn't talk to anyone, didn't do anything but think. Think about who I was now. Think about what I was going to do with the rest of my life. Think about how I was going to survive on so little money. On the 3rd day, someone knocked on the door. I looked through the peephole and saw it was Lucas. He was standing there, hands in his pockets, looking at the ground. I didn't open. I stayed on the other side of the door, listening. He knocked again, harder this time. "Mom, I know you're there. Open the door, we have to talk." I still didn't open. Not because I was afraid, but because I had nothing to say to him. "Not anymore." "Mom, please," he insisted. I came to apologize. Tiffany and I talked. We realized maybe we went a little overboard with the dinner. We want to fix things. I listened to his words and realized something. He wasn't truly apologizing. He was saying what he thought I wanted to hear, so I would go back to being the person I was before, so I would go back to being available, so I would go back to giving him money when he needed it. It wasn't genuine regret. It was manipulation. It was control. It was the same old thing disguised as an apology. "Mom, open the door or I'm going to think you're sick and I'm going to have to call someone," he said, and this time his voice sounded annoyed, threatening. But I didn't move. I stayed there, on the other side of the door, in silence. After a few minutes, I heard his footsteps moving away. I heard him go down the stairs, get into his car, drive away, and only then did I breathe with relief. I went back to the living room and sat down. I picked up my phone and saw I had more messages from him. I deleted them without reading them. Then I did something I never thought I would do. I changed my phone number. I went to the phone company the next day and asked for a new line. I explained that I needed a change for personal reasons. They asked no questions. They gave me a new number, and I walked out of there feeling strange, feeling as if I had cut the last thread connecting me to my previous life, with the Eleanor who always said yes, with the Eleanor who always forgave, with the Eleanor who was always available. That night I slept better than in weeks. It wasn't deep sleep, but at least I slept, and when I woke up, something had changed. It wasn't exactly happiness. It wasn't peace, but it was something like acceptance. Acceptance that my life was this now. Acceptance that I was alone. Acceptance that maybe I had always been alone, but now at least I was honest about it. I was no longer living in a fantasy. I was no longer pretending I had a family that loved me. Now, I was living in reality. And that reality, although painful, was more bearable than the lie. A week after the dinner, I was at the grocery store buying the basics. Bread, milk, eggs, rice. Simple things I could stretch through the whole month. I was checking prices on everything, comparing brands, calculating every cent. That was my new reality. I could no longer afford the luxury of buying without thinking. Every dollar counted now. I was in the dairy aisle when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Eleanor?" "Eleanor Vance." I turned around and saw Barb Miller, a woman who had worked with me years ago at the accounting firm. I hadn't seen her in more than 2 years. She approached with a warm smile and gave me a hug. "So good to see you. How have you been?" I forced a smile. "Good, Barb. Just here, doing the shopping." She looked at me more closely, as if she could see through my lie. "Are you sure? You look tired, Eleanor. Is everything okay?" I nodded quickly, not wanting to get into details. But Barb wasn't one to settle for superficial answers. "Come on, let's go get a coffee. It's been a long time since we chatted." I wanted to say no, that I was in a hurry, that I had things to do, but the truth was I had nothing. I had nowhere to go, no one to talk to, nothing but my empty apartment waiting for me. So I accepted. We paid for our groceries and went to a small coffee shop near the supermarket. We sat at a table by the window. Barb ordered 2 coffees and some sweet pastries. I protested, saying I wasn't hungry, but she insisted, "Don't be silly, Eleanor, my treat." When the coffees arrived, she looked me directly in the eyes and asked, "What happened? And don't tell me nothing, because I know you. Something is wrong." I lowered my gaze to my cup, feeling the tears beginning to form. I didn't want to cry. I had already cried enough. But Barb's words, her genuine concern, broke something inside me, and I began to speak. I told her everything, The dinner, the $8,000, the humiliation, how Lucas had left me alone with the check, how I had changed my phone number. Barb listened in silence, without interrupting, only nodding from time to time. When I finished, she took my hand across the table. Eleanor, what your son did to you is abuse. That isn't love. That isn't family. That is someone who is using you. I nodded, because deep down I already knew. But hearing it aloud, hearing it from someone else, gave it a different weight. It gave it validity. You did well to distance yourself, Barb continued. I know it hurts. I know he is your son. But there are limits. And he crossed all of them. I wiped my tears with a napkin. I don't know what to do now, Barb. I am alone. I am without money. And I am scared. You are not alone, said Barb firmly. You have me. And we are going to find a way for you to get through this. We spent the next hour talking. Barb told me she knew other women who had gone through similar situations with their adult children. She told me there were support groups, communities where older women helped each other. She told me about small job opportunities, things I could do to earn a little extra money. Babysitting, cleaning jobs, cooking for small events. Nothing glamorous, but things that could help me survive. When we said goodbye, Barb gave me her phone number. Call me whenever you want, Eleanor. For anything, you don't have to go through this alone. That night, in my apartment, I felt different. I was still scared, still hurt, but there was something new, something small but real, hope that maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild my life. I could create something new, something that didn't depend on Lucas, something that was just mine. The next day, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, thinking maybe it was Lucas from another phone. But I answered. It was Tiffany. Eleanor, we need to talk, she said without even saying hello. Her voice sounded tense, annoyed. What do you want, Tiffany? I asked with a tired voice. Lucas is very upset because of you. He doesn't sleep, doesn't eat. He is worried about you. I almost laughed. If he is so worried, why doesn't he come to talk to me himself? Tiffany paused. Because you changed your number. Because you won't open the door. Because you are acting like a capricious child. I felt the rage rising in my throat. I am not the one who acted wrong, Tiffany. I wasn't the one who organized an $8,000 dinner without warning. I wasn't the one who left her mother alone paying a bill she couldn't pay. I wasn't the one who lied. Tiffany sighed with exasperation. Get over it already, Eleanor. It was just a dinner. Besides, Lucas told you he's going to pay you back. I don't want his money, I responded firmly. I don't want anything from you anymore. Wow, how dramatic, said Tiffany sarcastically. And what are you going to do? Are you going to cut contact with your only son over a stupid dinner? If necessary, yes, I said. And this time my voice didn't shake. This time it sounded sure, decided. Tiffany stayed silent for a moment, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then her tone changed. It became more aggressive. You know what, Eleanor? Better this way. Lucas doesn't need you. We don't need you. Live your life alone and bitter if that's what you want. And she hung up. I stayed with the phone in my hand, feeling a mix of emotions, pain, because those words still hurt me, but also relief. Relief knowing that now everything was clear. There were no more masks. There were no more pretenses. They had shown who they really were, and I had chosen not to accept it. The following days were strange. There were moments when I felt strong, moments when I felt I had done the right thing. But there were also moments of weakness, moments when I wanted to call Lucas, moments when I missed the illusion of having a family, even if that family treated me badly. But every time I felt that weakness, I remembered that night in the restaurant. I remembered my son's face when he told me to pay. I remembered Tiffany's laugh. I remembered how everyone had abandoned me there. And that gave me the strength to keep going. Not to return. Not to fall into the same pattern again. One afternoon, 2 weeks after the dinner, I received an unexpected visit. Someone knocked on the door, and when I opened, I saw a young woman standing there. She was about 30, dark hair, tired eyes. Are you Eleanor Vance? She asked. I nodded cautiously. Yes, that's me. Can I help you with something? She introduced herself as Jessica Diaz, a distant cousin of Tiffany. I need to talk to you. It's about what happened at the dinner. My first instinct was to close the door, not wanting to know anything more about that family. But something in her expression stopped me. She didn't seem to be there to attack me. She seemed nervous, even scared. I let her in. We sat in the living room, and Jessica began to speak. I was at that dinner. I was one of the people eating and drinking while you paid, and I came to apologize. I looked at her surprised. She continued. I didn't know what Tiffany and Lucas were planning. None of us knew. Tiffany told us it was a family dinner, that everything was arranged, that we didn't have to worry about anything. When I saw what happened, when I saw how they left you alone with the check, I felt horrible. Her eyes filled with tears. I wanted to say something. I wanted to offer to help, but Tiffany stopped me. She told me if I got involved, she was going to make my life impossible in the family. And I am a coward, Mrs. Vance. I stayed quiet. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to be angry with her too, but I saw her genuine regret, and I couldn't. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Jessica took a deep breath. Because after that dinner, things exploded in the family. Tiffany told everyone you were being dramatic, that you had cut contact with Lucas for nothing. But some of us started talking, and we realized this wasn't the first time. Tiffany has done this before with other people. She has used people, manipulated situations to get benefits. And I don't want to be part of that anymore. She handed me an envelope. This is what I ate that night. I calculated how much it was and brought you the money. It is $350. I know it isn't much compared to what you paid, but it is what corresponds to me. I took the envelope with trembling hands. $350. It wasn't much, as she said, but it meant something bigger. It meant that not everyone was like Lucas and Tiffany. It meant there were still good people, people with a conscience, people who recognized when something was wrong. Thank you, Jessica, I said with a soft voice. She got up to leave. One more thing, Mrs. Vance. What you did, distancing yourself from them, was the bravest thing I have seen, and I think more people in the family should do the same. When she left, I stayed seated with the envelope in my hands, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't exaggerating. What they had done to me was wrong. And someone else had seen it. Someone else had recognized it. 3 months passed since that dinner. 3 months in which my life changed in ways I never imagined. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried. Nights I missed Lucas with a physical pain that split my chest. There were moments my phone rang with unknown numbers, and I knew it was him, trying to contact me again, and I had to resist the temptation to answer. But with every passing day, I became stronger. With every passing day, I remembered more clearly why I had made that decision. And with every passing day, I built a new life that was just mine. Barb kept her promise. She connected me with a group of older women who met every Wednesday at a community center. At first, I didn't want to go. I was ashamed to tell my story, to admit my son had treated me like that. But when I finally went, I discovered something surprising. I wasn't alone. There were other women who had gone through similar things, some even worse. Women whose children had abandoned them, stolen from them, mistreated them, and all of them had found the way to move forward, to rebuild themselves, to find dignity in the midst of pain. Listening to their stories gave me strength. It made me realize what had happened to me wasn't my fault, that I hadn't failed as a mother, that I had simply raised a son who chose to be selfish. I got a job taking care of an 5-year-old lady 3 times a week. It wasn't much money, $300 a month, but it helped. Also, I started baking desserts and selling them to neighbors and acquaintances, cakes, cookies, flan, simple things I had learned to make when Lucas was little. That gave me another $200 a month. It wasn't enough to live in luxury, but it was enough to survive with dignity. It was enough not to depend on anyone. It was enough to feel useful again, to feel I still had value, that I could still contribute something to the world. One day, 4 months after the dinner, I was at the park with Barb when I saw Lucas. He was sitting on a bench, alone, looking at his phone. He looked different, thinner, more tired, with deep circles under his eyes. He saw me before I could turn around. He got up and walked toward me. Barb squeezed my arm. "Do you want me to stay?" she asked. I nodded. I didn't want to face him alone. Lucas stopped in front of us. "Mom," he said, and his voice sounded broken. "I have been looking for you for months." I didn't answer. I just looked at him, waiting to see what he wanted now. "I need to talk to you. Please," he insisted. "Speak," I said with a firm voice. Lucas looked at Barb with discomfort. "Alone." I shook my head. "Whatever you have to tell me, you can say in front of my friend." He sighed, frustrated, but finally spoke. "Tiffany and I broke up. She left me a month ago." I felt something hearing that, but it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't joy, it wasn't satisfaction. It was just emptiness. "I am sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it seriously. Not because I cared about Tiffany, but because I knew that for Lucas that must be painful. "You aren't sorry," he said bitterly. "You were right about her. You were right about everything." "And you come to tell me that now?" I asked. "You come to tell me I was right after everything that happened?" Lucas lowered his gaze. "I come to apologize. I come to tell you I am sorry, that I was wrong, that I should have listened to you." I looked at him in silence for a long moment. Part of me, the part that was still a mother, wanted to hug him, wanted to tell him everything was okay, that I forgave him. But the other part, the part that had learned to value herself, knew she couldn't do that. "Not yet. Maybe never. Lucas, I appreciate your apology, but an apology doesn't erase $8,000. An apology doesn't erase months of manipulation and mistreatment. An apology doesn't erase the fact that you left me alone in that restaurant knowing I couldn't pay that bill." He looked up, with tears in his eyes. "I know, Mom. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me now. I just want you to know I regret it, that I have been living with that guilt every day." I nodded. "Good. I hope that guilt makes you a better person. I hope you never treat anyone like you treated me ever again." Lucas took a step toward me, extending his hand as if he wanted to touch me. "Can we try again? Can we start from zero?" I took a step back. "No, Lucas. We can't. Because I am no longer the same person. I am no longer the mother who says yes to everything. I am no longer the woman who lets herself be trampled just to keep the peace. That woman died that night in the restaurant, and the woman I am now has no space for people who hurt her. But I am your son," he said, and his voice broke completely. "I am always going to be your son." I felt the tears filling my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "Yes, Lucas, you are always going to be my son, and I am always going to love you. But love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. Love doesn't mean sacrificing myself until I have nothing left. Love doesn't mean losing my dignity. And if you can't love me without hurting me, then it is better we stay apart." Lucas stayed standing there, not knowing what to say, not knowing what to do. Finally, after a long silence, he nodded. "I understand," he said with a voice barely audible. "I hope someday you can forgive me." And he left. I watched him walk away, walking with slumped shoulders, defeated. And I stood there, next to Barb, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't describe. "Are you okay?" asked Barb, taking my hand. I nodded slowly. "Yes, I am okay." And it was true. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But it was a different pain. It was the pain of closing a chapter, of letting go of something that no longer served, of choosing myself for the first time in my life. That night, in my apartment, I sat in front of the mirror and looked at myself. Really looked at myself. I saw the wrinkles around my eyes, the gray in my hair, the marks of time on my face. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw dignity. I saw a woman who had survived the worst and had come out the other side, not intact, but whole. I took my notebook and started to write. I wrote about everything that had happened, about everything I had learned, about everything I had felt. And at the bottom of the page, I wrote something that became my new mantra, my new truth. I do not owe my happiness to anyone. I do not owe my money to anyone. I do not owe my dignity to anyone. Not even to my son. Especially not to my son if he doesn't know how to value it. I closed the notebook and put it away. Tomorrow would be another day, a day in which I would continue building my new life, a life in which I was the protagonist, not the victim, a life in which I chose who entered and who left, a life in which I finally, after 67 years, learned to put myself first.